Okay, so in preparation for this assignment, what I really wanted the student to do on this was to make smaller gestural armature character experiments to practice how to wind up and twist the floral wire, the aluminum wire, and make different size characters. And specifically for this one, I put clay on it already. This one's a little big, but you can see here what you're going to do is you're going to use that steel stick, that plumber's putty, to connect the arms and to kind of fasten the wire down around the hips so that where it's twisted up, one leg doesn't kind of pivot and twist in front of the other. So the little 5 to 6 inch, 7 inch, whatever model, depending on type of character, I did that one here already. That's this little guy here. And you see, I did this one with I was playing with the hard monster clay because I wanted to see what the difference would be. And so this little guy here is about, yeah, he's about 4 inches tall. But his head, if you look at the evolution of this drawing, here's the disc. You see the disc is right at the width. So this is the size. This disc alone for the cap is 6 inches tall. So if your character is wider than he is tall, you'll want to use whatever the biggest measurement is, or if he's wide and tall, if he's like kind of boxy, you want to make it a little small. So don't get crazy with the sizes because believe me, the clay is heavy and it will get heavy if you have a super stocky character. Make it smaller. I'd rather have you be a little smaller than too big because if you get really huge, it's going to fall apart. You're going to have problems. You're going to use way more clay. You know, it's $30 a box for the clay. So this little guy, because he's so skinny and wiry in the arms and legs, I wanted to make sure. I wish I had the armature reveal. Maybe I'll peel the clay off and redo this, but it's really really strong little tiny sculpture. You can see here at the arm, I still have a little bit of flex going there, and I didn't put clay on the fingers yet. And then for particle effects, I was going to have this be kind of a platformy, jumping type, kind of Mario Galaxy or Mario 3D World type game. And so I have like a little boost kind of cloud particle effects, which are, they're pretty hard to sculpt. So each time I do one of these, it's a new learning process. But if I pop this on there, you can see he's kind of leaping in air, and there's like a trail of what's going to be the fungi spores. He's going to be cleaning up his mush world in the world of mush concept game. And then here's what I was talking about with his sombrero esque type. So this is how I want to do in terms of construction. This little experiment allowed me going from this size. Now I'm going to ramp that up to a full one size. So just going, it might be only twice the height, but volume wise, I mean, it's going to be way, way heavier in relation. So because of that, I thought, this is going to work pretty well. I still could put a little clay on this and carve out some details, but I'll skip that for now. I don't want you guys to get too caught up in having to do more work than necessary. So, so yeah, so the disc for the head, this is closer to the 1 foot limit, but because it's so wide, I opted on this one. Oh, it is 12 inches. I did go right at. Okay, so I might make this smaller, I guess is the point. So if I decide once I get the head done and I have a little post there with the aluminum wire and maybe the caps only needs to be like this wide instead of way out there, and that might functional. This is the stuff you discover when you're designing characters and going through these processes, especially when you start rigging and animating. You might find that it gets caught on things too much. They can't get through the doorways. You got to change the architecture of your scene in order for the character to move about well, in an efficient manner. And so these types of design decisions can be made more downstream in a lot of production environments. You don't have to have the design super locked in first and roll forward. You can design as you go a little bit. And if as long as you're doing these rapid prototype processes, you should be okay. So if we look at this different solid shapes and parts on here, we want to overlay the costume. So like we're going to separate, like I did the cap, and overlay that. And then if he has costume pieces, belts, straps, things like that, shoes, gloves, whatever, horns, feathers, we're going to work those out later in the poses. So Right now we're at the maquette construction phase. So in Photoshop, I left the grid on here. You can see how I measured the head heights for this guy, and I kind of cut that out. So that could be, so I'm going to fill this in for us today. And here's the Photoshop file looks like. So I have put the guides on. And got things down to inches, 144 pixels per inch. You know, you could go lighter. This isn't a finished concept. This is just to construct it, so it doesn't need to have beautiful illustrative level pixel quality and all that good stuff. We're not there yet. But just kind of show you this. So I kind of did this little translucent one so that when I print it out and put it, whoops, and put it on onto the documentation, that it's see-through, and I could use this to print out and draw over the top of. I had this, I had to cock it, tilt it diagonally so that I could print out the full 12-inch for the actual cap if I want to play with the actual size. So I'm going to cut a piece of foam core that size. And then down here you can see I separated, just used the lasso tool. And then inside of the preferences, I just went in here to the units and rulers and the grid, I'm sorry, grid and grid slices, and I put a grid every 1 inch and with subdivisions of 4. So that's what we currently have here. If you see this, there is up here is 1 inch, and then you can see really lightly, there's little dotted lines every 4 subdivisions in there. So I could go through this in a little more detail, but I don't want you to get stuck in Photoshop right now. We got a lot of other fun stuff to cover. So let's get this last bit done, and we're going to lay this out. I do have an extra piece of fairly translucent graph paper here. So what I need to do is work out where the heel is. I need to bring those feet up, flatten them out, work out. I have no idea yet. Well, I have an idea, but it's like really just rudimentary in terms of what his face would look like from a quarter turn angle or side view. So I do need to work this character out in a side view. And then the cap itself, I'm going to get some tracing paper, and I'll grab the light box. You don't have to have a light box, but tracing paper really helps a lot. And I'm going to do a top view of this cap, and then I'm going to figure out how I want this to assemble on top of there. I might do what I did for the little gestural prototype, is leave a nice solid peg coming out the top of his head, and where I could just put a hole in this and then take it off and on. Because working on pieces individually and making little working stands, like little posts for yourself to hold like a hand or a garment or a big giant cap. To take that cap off, put it on its own stand and work it in detail, and then put it back on the character carefully is going to be really useful. So this is the stuff you learn. And then same thing for the digital realm, right? When you go and rig it, when you want to swap out characters, do pickups, do power-ups, things like that, you'll want to think about what pieces of the character can be left as separate meshes and which pieces you want to bring in there and put together. So let me get this all laid out, and we'll draw the actual 3D construction sheet, and then we're going to figure out the wires. And again, this U shape we talked about in class, this is to allow that forward and backward flexibility in the scapula and collarbone and clavicle. This is of course for biped. I will also pull out a couple other model sheets, one for a Cerebus, a Cyber Cerebus, kind of Cyber Thulu Punk, three-headed Hades hound creature. So I'll go through a little bit of the biped canine form, and I'll also pull out one of the original creatures from our Echo Canyon thesis project that we did. That was a GDC and done with some procedural audio. That's the four-winged creature that's going to give you an avian creature to look at. So that's going to have 4 wings, 2 tails, crazy exoskeletal anatomy. So between this biped, the quadruped Cerebus character, and the Valcordian or the flying winged creature, that gives you 3 good options. On the 4th and 5th one, I have Hydra, and so the Hydra character will give you a serpent, and the Kraken Thulu, which is basically a cephalopod, is going to give you tentacles and stuff like that. So let's stop here, and we'll come back and actually build the 3D model sheet for the Mush character.